Thanks for coming. Someone asked me, am I going to play Trump's victory speech? And I said next week, once you've recovered from the trauma. We have a completely sane and talented individual here who probably should have been elected President of the United States. I'm really pleased to welcome Tara Stephen, who's a graduate of Fleming. What year? Do you want me to say? 2011. Yeah. And she's currently working as the manager of waste management, County of Peterborough. And the great thing about having Tara here is that she gives you a really good sense of why this course is in the curriculum, because your job certainly involves a set of technical skills and intellectual skills that are of a more purely analytic sort. But what you're going to learn today is a good part of her job, in fact, maybe the crucial part of her job, is a set of skills that we've been talking about a lot. And core to it is the ability to make a pitch and figure out what the needs of stakeholders are. So, without further ado, Tara Stephen. You can give her a round of applause.
Thank you, guys. I haven't actually used a microphone in this room before. I'm usually down here yelling, so if I'm talking too loud, please let me know. And I also apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I have a bit of a cough. If I'm coughing and bothering you, just, I don't know, kick me out and whatever. Peter invited me in today to talk to you guys a little bit about the idea of persuasion. This isn't really a skill that I came out of college with. It's still a skill that I'm working hard to develop. I have to use it almost every day in my job. And I will tell you that oftentimes I'm not very persuasive, and I'll reflect on the situation I've been in and been like, oh my God, I screwed that up completely. So what I want to give you today is a bit of a system that I use when I have to enter a persuasive situation. And it's almost fail-proof. It typically works for me 99% of the time until, there's a left field thing that comes out, and then you can't really handle those situations anyway. But the system I'm going to kind of talk to you about today works really well, and so it's kind of my gift to you. And I haven't always been a manager. When I came out of college, I was in a technical position, and you don't think necessarily that you need those types of skills in the technical setting, but you really do. I've used them in every position I've been in, whether technical or supervisory or managerial. So really important skill, and I hope if you take anything away today that it is that some of these soft skills really are equally as important as the hard skills you come out of here with. So I kind of want to talk about persuasion in the terms of a bit of a case study. I work for the County of Peterborough, and the County of Peterborough diverts over half of municipal waste from landfill, which is actually a pretty impressive statistic considering that we don't have an organics program. So it's really, really rare for a municipality to be able to divert more than half their waste if they don't have some kind of organics program in place. And we are doing that. And it's because we've been able to persuade our residents to participate in the programs we have to offer and to think about the impact that they have on the environment when they're making decisions in their consumer habits. And we do that through persuasion. Okay, why? Why persuasion? Why do you need to know this? First of all, right from the day you leave here and you start interviews, your job is going to be to persuade an employer to hire you and pay you to do the work that you want to do the work that they need you to do. So you're going to have to be able to persuade them that you are the right candidate in and amongst all of the graduates that have come out of here, all the people who have some experience in the field. That's going to be an important thing for you if you even want to start a career. And once you have that job, you might show up in a workplace and find that the employer has like really old, outdated equipment, and you have just come from here, so you know that there's better technologies and better systems available, but the boss likes the way that you're doing it now. So, how do you persuade them to invest in more expensive equipment or in different technologies or different techniques? What's in it for them? Why should they allow that change or allow that purchase? I'm a graduate of the environmental technician program. Is this a general class? Yeah, so there's a bunch of different programs in here. My boyfriend is actually a driller. He graduated from the drilling and blasting program here. I don't think it's called that anymore, but so one of the things that he has to do on a day-to-day basis when he goes to a customer He'll get calls all the time about a pump not performing the way it's supposed to. That's a pretty cheap fix, $100, $200. He'll show up at the customer's home and realize it has nothing to do with the pump. Actually, the well needs an upgrade. The well's producing too much silt or not producing enough water. And he has to convince them then to spend $2,000 as opposed to the $200 that they were expecting in order to make their system function properly. So he has to be able to demonstrate what's in it for them in order to keep his business running. You might come out of here and work for the CAWT here at Fleming, and often they have to solicit higher levels of government for funding or third-party people for funding to do some of the projects that they want to do. So you have to be able to demonstrate to that level of government or to that private sector company why they should be giving you money and not some other project that might be a little bit more interesting or a little more flashy. You know, and maybe you end up working for Ducks Unlimited, and you've got some farm lands that are going to be developed into a subdivision, and you need to lobby for protection of the wetland that might be at the back of that property. How do you convince a developer whose sole purpose is to make money to allocate some land for the protection of wetlands, right? So these are all things that you could end up doing that will need you to be very persuasive in the way you approach some of these challenges. And so hopefully I can kind of help cement that skill in you guys. So when I put this presentation together, I was not expecting this outcome. So I'm sorry if this is too soon or whatever, but this happened. And I don't know, like for me, watching this election cycle, I was thinking like, this guy's an idiot, right? Did anybody else think that? Was that kind of like a, okay, that's a lot of hands. So Donald Trump is not an idiot. Don't get me wrong, he's an expletive, but he's not an idiot. He's very persuasive. This, I'm going to help build my case using Donald. So I'm winging this a little bit because I didn't think that he'd win. So I have to kind of reframe this as I'm spitting it out. I apologize if it doesn't make any sense. So really, okay, U.S. history, super rich, super complex. I'm just hitting some of the main points to help demonstrate what happened here. So 1950s, 1960s, post-World War II, U.S. was booming. They were doing really well. There was tons of manufacturing jobs. So if you were raised in the 1950s or 1960s, you were raised in a family where mom stayed home. It was a single-income family. If dad decided on Friday that he didn't like his boss, he could quit, and he would have another job on Monday, probably paying better. This was a time when there were signing bonuses. When companies were hiring people and telling those people that if they could find 3 more good employees, that they would get an extra bonus in addition to their signing bonus and in addition to their salary. Really good time for the U.S. economy. And there was a lot of people who recall this period in time. If you looked at immigration into the U.S. during this time, it was people leaving war-torn European countries coming to the U.S. White, middle class, European, educated. And so that's what made up the U.S. in the 1950s and 60s. Okay, then 1965, the U.S. decided we should open our borders to everybody. We shouldn't just allow Europeans into the country. So immigration flipped. It went from being largely white European people to being largely Mexican and Asian people. And then we got into the 1970s and 80s. And so the United Arab Emirates, who control the bulk of the oil in the world, decided they weren't going to sell it to the U.S. anymore. I don't know the history to that. It's just what happened. So there was a shortage of oil. Prices of oil skyrocketed. It went from like $3 a barrel to $12 a barrel. So, you know, moving into the 80s, this caused huge inflation rates. And as a result of that, the cost of everything went way up. Prices people hadn't seen in years. They were terrified. It was a really scary time. During the 80s, my parents had a mortgage on a house at a 25% interest rate. My current mortgage interest rate is 2.7, to put that in perspective. So this was a scary time for people. Then we got into the 2000s, and the auto sector collapsed in the U.S. And then, mortgage companies were betting against their own mortgages, which caused a housing bubble and then a collapse of the mortgage sector. And people lost their homes, and they lost their jobs. People who used to come out of high school and get a job in the auto sector, no more jobs. People who had a house were now moving in with their parents again. Sad time for the U.S. Then we kind of got through that. We got to now, and we've had liberal governments in power in the U.S. for a long time. They've been pushing forward some more socialist ideas, particularly environmental ideas. There's limitations on manufacturing and energy sectors, and they're starting to enforce waste generation limits in people's homes. So people in the U.S. right now really feel like the government's fingers are in their business. So if you were born and raised in the 1950s and 60s, and you lived through this, and your life has seemingly not the quality you expected it to have, what are you thinking? Like, what are you blaming this on? It's not your fault, right? It's the fault of the immigrants. We started letting people in, and stuff just went for a dive. It's the fault of the Arab countries. So Muslim religion. Arab countries are mostly Muslims. It's their fault. We can't trust them. It's the fault of the auto sector sending jobs elsewhere, and I don't have a job anymore. It's their fault, and it's the job of the government enforcing all these environmental policies on me, and I can't do what I need to do. The jobs are leaving because we have to follow all these strict rules. So, if that's your worldview, let's think about how Donald Trump capitalized on that. So, you think your life is threatened by minorities. Donald Trump knows that. He said, I'm going to build a great, great wall on our southern border. I'll make Mexico pay for that wall, mark my words. That's like music to the ears of people who are afraid of foreign people. If you think Muslims can't be trusted, when asked what he would do about Muslim immigration in response to what's going on in Syria, he said that they're not coming to this country if I'm president, right? So that, to people who are terrified of the Muslim religion, is comforting. It makes you feel good, like, okay, as long as Donald's in power, they're not coming here. In response to disappearing manufacturing jobs, he kept telling people he's going to bring those jobs back. He didn't say how, but he promised that he would bring those jobs back. And he acknowledged, he justified to those people that, yeah, you're right, our jobs are fleeing the country. They're going to Mexico. Very convincing, right? And then this idea that the government has their hands in your life and they're pushing environmental policies on you. Donald Trump acknowledged the fact that global warming was created by and for the Chinese to limit U.S. manufacturing jobs. Okay, so he's taking all the things that people in the U.S. hold at their core, and he's speaking directly to each one of those things and justifying the beliefs that they had and empowering those people to make some decisions. So that's why it happened. I would like you to use persuasion for good, not evil. So just keep this whole idea in mind and while I go into a bit of a case study on how to do this the right way. So as I said, County of Peterborough has a really good diversion rate. We achieved this through persuasion. And before I get into this, one of the things that I want to do is identify some stakeholders. So here's how waste diversion works in Ontario. So if you buy a water bottle, what do you do with that water bottle when you're done with it? Recycle it. Oh, thank God you said that and not throw it out. Okay, so you recycle it. You throw it in your blue box. You drag that blue box to the curb. Maybe Thursday afternoon, the garbage truck comes along, picks up your blue box, takes the whites out of your hair. Then it goes to a recycling facility where it's, reinvented into a wolf sweater or, a sleeping bag or something. This process costs a lot of money. This process actually costs more than landfilling. So where does that money come from? It comes from you, first of all. You pay for half of the cost of this system. You pay for that through your property taxes. If you're not a homeowner, you pay for that through your rent because your landlord is paying property taxes on your behalf. So you, as a resident of the province of Ontario, are responsible for 50% of the cost of picking up the blue box, taking it to a recycling facility, manufacturing it into something new, advertising that system, blah, 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 blah. You're on the hook for half. The other half is actually paid for by the person or the company who manufactures the product that you're recycling. So in the case of the water bottle, Nestle is on the hook for the other half of that cost. They pay those funds to a body called Stewardship Ontario, and Stewardship Ontario is kind of the custodian or guardian of those funds. They hang on to those funds, and then they confirm that the municipality has done a good enough job recycling this, collecting enough of the products that they put into the market and turning them into wolf sweaters. And if that's the case, then Stewardship Ontario will release the other half of those funds to the municipality. A little bit complicated, but that's kind of how it works. So, with kind of the process in mind, we as a municipality need to be persuasive to our residents to participate in this program because by law we have to run it. And if we don't do a good enough job, we don't get the other half of our money. So we need to make sure that people are participating in this program and that it's working. So to do that, we kind of follow a 6-step system when I'm thinking about how to persuade people. And I'm using the blue box system as an example, but I do this when I want to have a day off and I need to ask my boss, or if I want to implement a new program and I have to sell my counsel on that. And basically, first of all, what we do is we identify our own needs. What am I trying to do? I make sure it's really clear, the end goal that I'm trying to achieve, so that I know exactly where I'm going, so my path is clear. Then I identify any potential challenges, because if you don't, then you're not ready when something goes wrong. So that's kind of an important step in this whole situation, is making sure you're ready for anything that's going to happen. Then I identify the stakeholders. The next 3 steps are hands down the most important part of getting ready to persuade somebody or getting your way in the workplace. Your stakeholders are the most important part of this. So you have to understand who you are affecting when you implement the program that you're trying to implement, or when you're going to get whatever it is that you're trying to get. Then you're going to identify what their needs are. Because the next step, this is how you're going to get your way, is you're going to fulfill your stakeholders' needs. Once you do that, you're pretty much clear sailing. You'll reap the rewards of whatever it is you're trying to get. But yeah, it's really important to identify those stakeholders, identify their needs, and then make sure you're fulfilling their needs. So in terms of the County of Peterborough and our Blue Box system, thinking about our needs, we need to run this Blue Box program because, as I said, this is legislated. So under the Waste Diversion Act, Ontario Regulation 101 requires municipalities of a certain size to offer a reasonably convenient system for the management of blue box materials in the province of Ontario, blah, 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 blah. So by law, I have to do that. If I don't, I get a huge fine and I get fired. So then there's like the other nice thing here. Now, I need to increase landfill lifespan. I have one landfill in my community. It's shared with the city of Peterborough. Landfills are massively expensive and controversial undertakings if you want to open one up. So I've got 27 years to retirement, and in those 27 years, I am refusing to open a landfill. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have to, handle the crazy neighbors disputing it and getting mad at me and phoning me. So for me, my goal is to make sure that I'm increasing the current available lifespan of the landfill that I currently own and operate. So I also alluded to the fact that if the Stewardship Ontario body is not satisfied that we've done a good enough job recycling, they won't release the other half of our funds, which puts the municipality on the hook for the whole 100% of the cost of the blue box system in our community. So I need to make sure that I'm controlling program costs, because if they feel like it's too expensive, they won't pay me. And if it is too expensive, my council is going to get really mad and I'm going to get in trouble and I'm going to get fired. See where this is going? This is about me in this slide. And I need to access the available funding by controlling the costs and making sure that our program is successful. Kind of like in the nice, fluffy, happy side of things, besides all these really selfish reasons for wanting my Blue Box program to work, I also want to make sure that I'm reducing the dependence on resources in my community. I don't want my community to be completely dependent on oil, on cutting down trees, on, digging up resources. I want us to use what we've already extracted from the earth and making sure that we're capturing and reusing that as much as possible. So this is kind of like the nice, happy piece of my goals as a municipality. So as far as challenges go, we have a lot, but the main one for us is that this encircled red area is the outline of the municipality of the county of Peterborough. This is the city of Peterborough. They're actually separate from us, but our office is in the city of Peterborough. So I work at the Star, and I service that corner up there where it says Kinmount. That's an hour and a half away from my office. I service up there where it says Wollaston. That's an hour and 45 minutes away from my office. I service over here where we're just about in Marmara. That's about an hour away from my office. And then I service down here in Baileyborough, which is about a half hour away from my office. So I have to collect materials from all four corners of this huge geographic area. The cost of that is enormous because there's also very low population density. So I have very few taxpayers paying for an awful lot of transportation of materials. I've got a truck running up to Apsley to collect 5 people's houses in the winter. So that's challenging. I have to be able to maximize my money in order to be able to afford to operate this system. The other issue we have is that basically everything from where it says Havelock North is seasonal. So this is all cottages. I don't have access to these people through the whole year. I'm at work Monday to Friday. They're at the cottage Saturday to Sunday. When I'm at work, they're in Toronto. When I'm at my cottage, they're here. So, we have to kind of come up with creative ways to reach that group of people who we don't have access to through the bulk of the year. They've also been exposed to a completely different program at home. So if they live in the City of Toronto, they're recycling in a completely different way than if they live here. If they live in City of Kawartha Lakes, which is like literally right here, it's a different program than it is right here. So we have to make sure that we're really clear in the instructions that we're giving them because there's a lot of confusion in the province of Ontario about how blue box systems work. So these are some of our challenges. So when we think about our stakeholders, I've listed 4, but there's many, many, many more. If I did that, we'd be here all day. But these are some really key stakeholders in our blue box system. The first and obviously most important is the users. So the people that I'm expecting to throw that pop can or that water bottle into the blue box, they're my key user. The whole system depends on their participation in this program. And I said I've got permanent residents, people who live in my community all year round. It's their permanent home. They're only exposed to my blue box program. So I've got that half of the coin. And then I've got seasonal residents. And that's those people that I don't have access to all year round, and I don't even have access to them during the week most of the time. So 2 different demographics of people, equal challenges with both of them. That's my main stakeholder. My secondary stakeholder is my council. So because I work for a municipality, I have a boss and he has a boss. That's the CAO. The CAO's boss is a team of councillors. These are people from the community who are elected into that position. The County of Peterborough is an upper tier municipality. So anybody here from Durham? I've got some people from Durham. So we're the same sort of setup. We're the upper tier, so we have the County of Peterborough, and then below us there's a bunch of townships. So I've got 8 separate townships, actually. So all of those townships are a little bit different. They each have their own council, and then the county as a whole provides service to each of those townships. So I've got 8 township councils that all are vying for attention for their township and looking out for the specific needs of their township. And then I've got county council, which is made up of the mayors and deputy mayors of all of those township councils, who then come together and argue about who should get the service for their area at the county level. And then, they're supposed to kind of look at things from the whole, what benefits everybody. So kind of 2 different perspectives that I have to be able to speak to, and a lot of, conflicting needs and wants there. I've got stewards. So this is the producers of that water bottle. So like Nestle. Nestle is a steward. They're partially responsible for the recycling system in Ontario. So I'm speaking to Blue Box today, but I actually have a number of different stewards that I answer to. I answer to the Blue Box stewards. So this is companies like Nestle, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, people who manufacture paper, anything that you put in your Blue Box, the company that produced that is a steward of that product. I also have stewards who I deal with for hazardous waste. I have stewards who I deal with for tires. I have stewards who I deal with for electronics. So lots of different people representing the private sector and wanting, because I'm delivering a service on their behalf, so they want it delivered the way they would deliver it as a company. And then this final group of stakeholders that I'm pointing out, this is a really important group of stakeholders that it's so easy to forget because they're nice and they're not squeaky wheels until you piss them off. So advocates of your program, whatever field of the environment you get into, whether any portion, any sector of the environment you get into, you're going to have advocates. And you really need to focus on keeping these people happy. Don't forget about them. They will push your agenda on your behalf, which saves you a lot of work. They're a community, nonpartisan voice that helps you, progress in whatever field you're doing. So in my case, I've got a couple. I've got Sustainable Peterborough, which is this organization that's responsible for making sure that the greater Peterborough area, so the city of Peterborough and then the county of Peterborough, which surrounds Peterborough, is making sustainable decisions in all of their policies and that all of the businesses within those areas are working in a sustainable fashion. And I've got a couple of waste management committees. So these are just people from the community who have a particular interest in waste management and would like a say in what we do. Sorry guys, I just need a sip of water. So now that I've identified some of the main stakeholders that I need to work with, I need to think about what their needs are in terms of my program and what I'm trying to do. So starting with the users, so we've got for example, if you are a family and you are, you've got like a 10-year-old kid and an 8-year-old kid and you work full-time and your husband works full-time, you've got to get up in the morning, you got to get breakfast into the kids, you have to get their lunches packed, you have to get them dressed, you have to get them out the door, make the school bus on time, you have to get to work, you have to work a full 8-hour day, then you have to go get the kids from after-school programs. After the school programs, you have to get them to hockey practice, you have to go through hockey practice, maybe they have a game after that. After the game, you have to get them home, they have to do their homework, you need to get supper into them. You've got half an hour to watch the U.S. election results before you pass out in a chair, wake up and do it all again the next day. Your life is really busy. And you don't necessarily have time to learn about different Blue Box programs and is this thing recyclable? Is this thing recyclable? Am I putting this in the right bin? What day is my collection? We need to make sure that if people are going to participate in our programs, that they are as simple as possible, because this is not people's passion. It's not their career. It's not even a thing that they enjoy as a hobby. It's something that they have to do if they want to continue to have waste and recycling collection. So we need to make sure it's easy. It also has to be accessible. Again, people are super busy. They don't have time to take, the water bottle over to the transfer station and then the stacks of paper over to the grocery store to return it and then take their styrofoam to the municipal office. And they need everything to be easy to get to, which is why we have the Curbside Blue Box program. they also need to be motivated. I remember when I went away, I had a whole career path before getting into the environment. I was going to go into phys ed, don't make fun of me. And so I went away to university, showed up first day. I'd grown up in an environmental family. My mom works in the environment, my dad works in the environment. We grew up in this like strict recycling household. I got to university and the dorm I lived in didn't recycle. Everything just went in the garbage. And I remember being excited about that. I was like, sweet, I don't have to worry about recycling anymore. This is so much easier. So there's got to be some motivation to actually get you to do this thing that's slightly harder than throwing everything into a garbage bag. So my council, they have two pretty simple needs. One is that they just want taxes to stay low, because the second you raise taxes, they get a million angry phone calls from a million angry constituents, and it eats up their Friday night, and they don't like it, and I can't blame them. Those are not happy calls to deal with, and if they can maintain a predictable tax level for the people that live in their community, typically they have a happy community. They also don't want any surprises, because again, if people are surprised, they get upset and they phone the counselors, and then the counselors have to deal with them, and then they call staff and try to deal with that, and also not pleasant. So they just want everything to be predictable so that when something changes, they can explain it to their constituents when they call. My stewards, they want the cost to be controlled, because this is a program that comes off their bottom line. So if Nestle has to pay $1 million to a municipality, that's $1 million that's not in the CAO's pocket. So they want to make sure that whatever they're paying us is as little as possible. They also have an obligation by law to pay into that Blue Box program. So they need us to be delivering the service on their behalf, and they need to be compliant with the law. Our advocates, I talked about this a little bit, but they just want input. They're interested, they're committed, this is something they believe in, this is something that is important to them. They just want to say in what's going on, whether they get their way or not. They want to make sure that you've heard their input and that they feel like they've had some impact on whatever is happening. And the other thing too, specific to waste management, but there's always going to be, whatever field you're in, a specific cause that they look to. For us, it's responsible disposal. They just want to make sure that we aren't collecting all of those water bottles and then shipping them down the road to burn. They want to make sure they're actually being recycled into wolf sweaters, and they want to make sure that we're doing that in the most environmentally friendly manner possible. So now that I've identified my stakeholders, I've identified their needs, all I have to do is fulfill their needs. Hardest part, but most important part. So remember we talked with the users about the fact that their lives are busy and they need this program to be simple and accessible, and they need to be motivated to use it. Okay, so how do we at the county make this simple? We use very identifiable program branding. So we have this system of buttons. Each one of these buttons represents a different program that we have. Any advertising we do, whatever we're talking about, we sum it up with a button on that advertising, like nice and prominent, so that when the people are reading that piece of advertising, they're taking in all of the little things that we're talking about and they're associating it with a specific program so they know what to do with it. And then at all of our sites, all of the signage that we have up has one of these buttons. So if somebody read in the newspaper that drywall is recyclable and they saw this little hammer button and then they show up at the site and there's a big picture of a hammer button, they're like, oh, that's where my drywall goes, I take it over there. We also have a bit of a technique that we use in our advertising, the 5-second rule. You probably know about this. We're like a 140-character world right now. I have 5 seconds to get my message across from you, which is why I've taken 35 minutes so far. And like you're taking in so much information all the time, right? Like there's advertising everywhere. There's entertainment competing for your brain space, and we have to manage to get through all of that noise and have people hear the message that we're trying to give them. Basically, we've learned we've got 5 seconds. So you can really only get 1, maybe 2 key messages across in 5 seconds. So we always start with the most important message. So in our brochure that we have for the Blue Box program, for example, for us, the most important message that we have to get across about the Blue Box program is that in the county of Peterborough, you have to sort your recycling into 2 streams. All the papers go in one box, all the containers go in another box. So when you open up our brochure, it's just a giant picture of 2 boxes, one that says paper, one that says containers. 5 seconds, now people in my community know we have to sort our recycling here. If they don't figure out exactly how to do it, that's fine. At least they're probably making an attempt. The next most important message is what materials go in there. So we kind of like list that underneath. So if people have 6 seconds instead of 5, they might go into that list and have a look at it. And then we kind of structure our messages that way, right? We work it down. We start with the most important thing, and then we kind of make everything subsequent to that. So for accessibility, the bulk of our community has curbside Blue Box collection right now. So all you have to do when you're trying to run the kids to school is drop your Blue Box at the curb. It'll get picked up at some point that day. You don't have to worry about it anymore. There's still some areas that don't, largely cottagey, but I'm not going to get into that. It complicates things. And so the other thing we do is there's some materials that are really hard to dispose of, like hazardous waste. There's no real convenient place to drop that off. So to make it convenient for people, we offer many, many, many events through the year on weekends and after work so that they can come and get rid of that stuff on their own time when they have a few minutes. We're continually broadening our curbside programs. I said that we don't have it anywhere, so we always push to make that more accessible at the doorstep so more people can participate easily. We also do a lot of things where we will literally come to you. You know, I showed you that map where I've got residents an hour and 45 minutes away from me. So if they move to the community and they don't know how to sort properly and they're putting things out to the curb that's all like in one box and they're just screwing it right up. We can't get them to come to Peterborough so we can talk to them, or we can't get their phone number. So we literally go out in the field during the summer and we walk up and down the streets when people's Blue Boxes are, we have a look at them and we see what's in those boxes. If they're doing it right, we leave them a little thank you note. If they're doing it wrong, we just leave them a quick note to say, hey, did you know you have to sort your recycling into 2 blue boxes? We stick it to the side of their blue box, and then we leave them a second blue box to make it even easier. They don't have to come get one. Here's a free blue box. Please sort your materials. So we get right out there in the field and we get into people's faces and make sure that our message is clear to them and prevalent in their lives. And then when it comes to the motivating side of things, remember I said that I was excited that I could just throw everything in the garbage. I didn't have to sort it. In the entire county of Peterborough, we limit the number of bags you have. So in some areas it's 2 bags, in some areas it's 1 bag. In some areas you pay literally for every bag that you throw out. So if there's a monetary tag or a limit associated with the amount of garbage you're allowed to produce, but there's a free Blue Box program, you're likely to take that garbage or that recycling out of your garbage bag and put it into the Blue Box program. So we kind of motivate people with money a little bit here. And then we've also straight up banned recycling from the landfill. So if you have recycling in your garbage bag and we see that, we won't collect it. You have to take it all apart and deal with it yourself. Kind of motivating if you have to go back through your garbage. My council's needs. So again, they want low taxes so they don't get yelled at, and they want no surprises so they don't get yelled at. So we always make sure that we take on a competitive tender process. This means that we don't just pick Joe's haulage to collect all the Blue Box materials because Joe's my friend from college. We tell all of the bidders in the area what we want to do, and then we let them submit a price to us, and then we pick the most competitive price. So whichever price comes in lowest with the most amount of service. And that keeps our costs low and forces a bit of competition into our market. We adhere to strict contract management principles. So I literally check line by line every single invoice that comes through the door to make sure that they're not charging me $5 too much, or that they've missed a complete cycle of work that they're going to charge me later, and that there's no interest added onto any bills. By doing that, we just make sure that we have a tight control and that nobody's kind of sneaking anything by us and trying to gain access to public money that they don't have rights to. We use local companies wherever possible. This is a big win in our council's books because it keeps their constituents employed locally. It supports the local economy. It supports people moving to the community and staying in the community as opposed to commuting in and out to go different places to work. We created a long-term waste management master plan. This is getting into kind of like the no surprises thing. So we outlined everything that we are going to do in our department for the next 20 years. And then we started setting aside money to do that, like a savings account. And that way, council always knows what's coming. They know when it's coming, and they know where the money is coming from to do that, so that in a particular year, we don't have a massive tax hike. And that's been a huge asset to us. If you get into any branch of your career you get into, I highly suggest creating long-term plans so that any stakeholders you have a very clear view of what's going on in your life, in your work. And then whenever we implement those master plan recommendations, we work really, really hard to make sure that we deliver those things on time and on budget. Otherwise, it goes a little bit sideways with council. Sorry, one more second. Okay, so then our stewards, that's those companies that pay into the Blue Box program. They're on the hook for the other half. Again, they want cost control because this is a piece of their business. It's taking profit out of their pocket. So we do that competitive tender process. That keeps them happy. They know they're getting the best price on any services that we're delivering on their behalf. That contract management piece, again, we're making sure that there's no additional costs coming out of their pocket that shouldn't be there. We optimize our services wherever possible. So an example of this is kind of like a very kitschy term, optimizing our services. Basically what this means is that if somebody else nearby is offering a similar service, we get together and we look at ways that we can amalgamate those programs to gain economies of scale advantage. Do you guys understand what that means? Like, okay, so the more of something you order, the cheaper it becomes per piece. So when we purchase blue boxes, we purchase them with a conglomerate of municipalities. We all order the same blue box so that each blue box costs $4 instead of $6, that sort of thing. So that's a big win in the eyes of the stewards for us. And then, as far as the compliance piece goes, we maintain very transparent records. Tomorrow, if you're curious about the financials of my division, you are allowed to call up the municipality and ask for the records, basically for as long as we have them. We keep financial records for 7 years. I'm required by law to send those to you, and they are all accurate, and they are all audited on an annual basis. So the more transparency we have in our paperwork and our financial systems, the happier our stewards are. We also adhere to very strict standards, which we kind of worked with the stewards in cooperation to set out. So standards for accessibility to the program. They want us to have like curbside access for so many people. They want, particular styles of messaging. We have to comply with different pieces of legislation that require different styles of messaging. So all in all, applying to all of these agreed to standards keeps everybody compliant with the legislation, keeps both parties happy. And then finally, our advocates. I don't know if you get the impression, but I have pissed off an advocate before, and it was a nightmare. So these guys are like my little, I carry them around like a little egg. They're so good to me if I'm good to them. So with these guys, okay, they want input, and then they just want us to deal with things responsibly. So the other thing about advocates is they will give you feedback unsolicited. So if you do something, they will email you and tell you whether they like that or not. You don't have to ask. So if they do that, like whenever our advocates do that, when they call me up and give me some input, I always listen to it. If it's something that I can do, I will do that. For example, actually, I'm just going to keep going. And then, okay, so I'm going to do this now. We implement their suggestions where possible. So, we had an advocate call us up and say, I can't read the signs at the transfer station. They're really confusing and they're starting to wear out. So last year, we replaced all the signs, and before we replaced them all, we sent a draft copy of the new sign to this advocate and said, hey, can you provide us some input on this? Do you like it? Is it going to work? Happiest person. This guy is just on our side forever now. He plugs our programs to everybody, and it was something that simple, just, hey, have a look at this, please. Before we make any change, we run it by our advocates. We just say, hey, here's what we're thinking of doing. Any concerns? We don't necessarily give them the option to make a direct change in that decision, but they have the option to point out some things that they think may go wrong. We participate in local committees, even when it's not a part of our mandate. If they invite us to participate in the committee, we will participate in it because it's worth our time to make those connections in the community. And then as far as the responsible disposal piece goes, we research potential markets, and oftentimes the advocates will bring those markets to our attention. So we make sure that we are actually giving some time to all of these ideas and to all of these potential alternatives. And then we make sure we seek out sound contractors. We want people who have some environmental policies and some health and safety policies, and people that are taking our products to a legitimate facility to be recycled and not just tossing them on a boat and sending them to China. And that makes this group of people really happy. And once we fulfilled all of those stakeholders' needs, our Blue Box program exploded. Like, in a matter of 5 years, we went from a 38% diversion rate to a 53% diversion rate, just by making people happy and fulfilling their needs, like, you know, that easily. And this makes me look good as a manager, personally. There's the selfish thing. It makes our county look good in the provincial scale of municipalities. So our councillors, when they go to meetings with other municipalities, they look good because they've achieved this. And then it makes the stewards look good because they're achieving successful results in a very rural municipality, which is a hard place to access or to you know, make these programs work. So, you know, pat on my back, right? So finally, regardless of what sector of the environment you land in, you're not going to have an easy sell. Environment sustainability, it's such a hard business to be in. We are asking people to do exactly the opposite of what their primal urge is. We all want more. We all want to have what we want when we want it. And what we're asking people to do is to take a second and not do that, or to do something that's a little bit harder than what the easy thing is to do. So when you have to do that, think like Donald and just fulfill the needs of your customer, understand those needs, and then fill them one by one. That's all I have for you today. Please feel free to take my email down. Contact me if you have any questions, not just about recycling, about anything. If you have, if you're about to go into an interview and you just want to run something by somebody, I am happy to do that. I tell every class that I ever go into this. Nobody ever contacts me. Please feel free. And when we post our jobs, please apply to them because we're always looking for new talent at the county. So thank you guys so much for having me in today.
Better than ever. God, it's nice to get to listen. I like being on the listening side sometimes. That was really good. And the opening, the Trump piece, totally caught me by surprise. So one of the things I hope you've noticed here is that the idea of stakeholders / audience, sort of same notion, right? We've been talking about the importance of audience. Stakeholders / audience and figuring out their needs has been part of the lecture on the promised land, right? Good old Matt Damon trying to figure out what are the needs of those people if I'm going to get natural gas leases. It was part of the Brownfields lecture last week about why stakeholder needs don't seem to have lined up over there with the old Dominion Arms. This week, Donald Trump figured out audience needs, not environmental. Some people might even think not relevant, but it's important. If you understand the notion of transferable, it means consistent across all kinds of examples. So whether it's a movie with Matt Damon, whether it's a Brownfields example, whether it's Donald Trump, or whether it's Tara's job, it's the same skill set. That's interesting. So thank you very much. And persuasion has to work the other way too. So every year she keeps coming back, and every year, if I can get this back on her, every year I give her a bottle of wine. And it's kind of environmental because it's got a picture of a fox on it. So thank you very much. Brilliant. Brilliant. See you next week. Thanks for coming.